Right, terrific. Well, thank you, Cindy. That was a lovely introduction, and I hope not to disappoint here. So today we're going to talk about understanding and measuring the true cost of compliance violations. And while that doesn't sound like maybe a sexy topic, it is something that's pivotal and core to your business success. So we're going to dive right in. I'll try to make it as fun and lighthearted and give you some good stories along the way of ways that I've seen others all across the nation learn, get on top of compliance, and actually use it as a way to differentiate themselves within their own market space. So, a little bit about me, as Cindy so lovingly said about me. I was an owner operator, and I agree with her. It not only gives me empathy for what you're doing today, wherever you are in the United States or even elsewhere, I have true respect and a call to action that I want to say to you. I personally do not think that our 0 to 5-year-old children should be institutionalized into public education and swallowed up into that beast. Not that public education isn't wonderful, because I think we have an excellent education system here in the United States, but I believe that 0 to 5, that particular special age category where the neuroconnections in the brain are rapidly firing off, are better served in private childcare. Why? Because there is innovation, love, and excellence in each of your centers. I know that because I've visited them all throughout the course of my career. 30 years now I've spent studying the business of childcare, and supporting the business of childcare personally and professionally. And so just a little bit more about me. I began my career in early care and education, and I owned my centers as an owner operator back in the early 90s. And then I migrated over to running a large nonprofit, growing it from about 800 locations participating on the food program to well over 1,500 programs participating in the USDA food program. And if any of you are out there either not participating or participating, we all know that it's a highly regulated program. You have to understand the rules and regulations thoroughly. Otherwise, you can get yourself into some trouble and it can cost you a world in fines and penalties. So I became a regulatory nerd. I learned to read regulation from a Master Chief, a retired Master Chief. He ran nuclear subs in the military. And so he had a thorough understanding of how to read and understand regulation, and he instilled that into me at an early time. So that's me. If you have a question about regulation, happy to chat with you after the call, and to help you navigate those difficult conversations with your state. My husband Travis and I have 6 grown children and 7 grandchildren, and we enjoy kayaking and traveling. And I personally collect primitive antiques. And now that you know more about me than you ever wanted to know, we're going to dive right in. So, I have a question for you. When does compliance become your top priority? And this is not to make anyone feel bad if you have had continuing, ongoing licensing violations in your childcare center or your school. Here's what I know. Our company, in fact, let me start back up for just a second. Our company, myself personally, wrote a grant. We've received some grant funding, and we're doing an in-depth analysis of data that we have received from the 50 state governments. We did FOIA requests. We asked for the licensing data across centers in the United States, and we're going to be actually publishing a really robust report. Don't worry, we're not going to be hanging anybody's name onto these licensing violations or calling attention to anyone personally, but just to shine a light into how complicated it is to understand the regulations and then instill those regulations into your team and help them to comply with them on an ongoing basis. And so when does compliance become a priority? I hate to say it, but oftentimes it's when the licensing analyst comes knocking at your door, or it's when a child has a serious incident and gets hurt, or even a staff member is injured or hurt. It's when staff turnover is occurring and you're recruiting less experienced talent. Maybe we're recruiting from the retail space now. We're recruiting from colleges. We're recruiting from medical, which I will say that's probably one industry that's relatively close to as regulated as childcare is, but they may be very young, right? And how do they have any compliance knowledge at all? It's unlikely. So is it when the maintenance to-do list has become so long that you're worrying about the roof falling in, or maybe the plumbing completely going out on a Tuesday? Or is it when that bright, shiny new school opens up just down the street? So you can answer for yourself, or you can answer in the chat if any of that kind of resonates with you. Feel free to kind of think about it, but I would challenge you, this needs to be your top priority on an ongoing basis. Now, before you go saying, oh my gosh, I don't need another priority, right? Because all business owners are kind of pulled. They're pulled with, I have to generate revenue. I have to make sure all the record keeping is done. I have to make sure my staff are okay. I have to recruit on an ongoing basis. I have to do all of these things. How do I prioritize them all? Don't worry, calm down. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to break it into chunk it down, in other words, into little bite-sized pieces. So don't worry, hang with me, and afterwards, if you have questions, I'll be happy to take them, and we'll dig right into these things together, okay? So the workshop objectives for today, we're going to define compliance violations. How did we get here? We're going to identify the costs, measure the costs, mitigate risks, and enhance your compliance culture. And we're going to talk at a kind of a high level and a quick pace. Don't worry, if you're not taking notes, I can send the slides to you afterwards. Of course, Mariah and the lovely team over at the National Childcare Association, they're going to send this recording to you, and you can play forward and back a dozen times if you need to. So just try to sit back and let some of this information come into your brain, and don't worry too much about taking, solid notes unless there's something you're feeling really passionate about right now. All right, so without further ado, we've got our first poll question here. And so, Mariah, I'm not sure if you're launching the poll. Oh, there it goes. I'm going to do it. We launched the poll. How do you keep track of routine daily procedures to ensure your center remains in compliance? And you only get to choose one of the three options. You got a checklist with a clipboard in the classroom as a reminder, but daily checks are not formally documented. You have complete checklists on paper, and after they're recorded on paper, they're either filed away in a binder or filed away on a filing cabinet. Maybe somebody reviews them at some point, or hey, we don't have any documentation for those kinds of things like opening and closing and looking over the playground for safety because my staff knows what to do, which it's common, and our staff oftentimes do know what to do. But put your answer in there, and then we will close the poll in just 50 more seconds, it looks like. Come on, get your answers in there. If there's, few more of you out there that are just being hesitant, don't worry, we're not going to call you out. I'm not calling anyone out by name. We're just trying to see, out of the people here today, how many of you have a formal system for this, an informal system, or no system at all, which I'm going to just be really radically candorous with you. In the very beginning, I had no checklist for anything. I had no real documented processes. We were a group of people who loved kids and loved to teach them. And so we would have probably fallen into that third category at first. But then over time, we learned. And so wherever you are on your business journey, it's okay. You can learn from one another. And that's how I learned most of everything I know today. So just a couple of more seconds, and we're going to share those poll results. All right. Is it sharing? I think it might be sharing already, but I'm going to go ahead and try to push that button. Okay, share results. Are we sharing results? Someone will have to tell me.
You are.
Awesome. Terrific. Love it. As you can tell, when you're presenting up here, you've got like all these monitors going and slides all over the place and notes. And so I can't really see what's necessarily on the updated screen, but look at that. we're split about 40%, 40%. Clipboard in the classroom, but daily checks are not formally documented. Or we have some documents, checklists on paper, and then they're filed away after. And a smaller portion of you who we're just going to assume are either newer to the business, or maybe you've just been operating so long it feels like you know everything. 20% not documented, but staff know what to do. All right. Well, that's good because that gives us kind of the lay of the land here for what I'm going to be talking about next. So, I think we've already shared results. Do I need to do anything with that? Okay, I'm going to close that poll. Hopefully I'm closing it correctly, and we're going to move on. All right, I'm going to hopefully advance my slides here. So when we did this the last time, we did a little poll of some of our customers and some of our prospects before, and we asked sort of that same question, and 52% had a checklist on a clipboard in a classroom, but weren't really formally doing it. 27% had paper that was inserted into a binder or not, and then 20% really they just know what to do. So very similar to the demographic we have in our webinar today, right? I will say that in that same poll, almost all respondents said they know they should be doing routine proactive audits and spot checks of current processes and procedures, and yet only about 39%, no matter the size of the operation, were actually doing it today. So we're going to talk about some simplistic ways to do that and why you should be doing it. So hate to say it, but here's a cold water reality check for you. So I love the image though, because it's a child, the child's having a great time, but let's just imagine we're all getting that cold water wake up call. If you are not measuring proactively the daily operational tasks that are being completed, then you are risking your business in a bigger way than you could ever imagine. So I'm going to say that one more time. If you are not proactively, in some way, documenting the daily tasks and processes being followed by your team and having insight into that to help you see trends and patterns, then you are likely in a world of jeopardy right now that you might not even be aware of. Now, let's not panic. I'm going to give you some good news. So Atul Gawande, author of Better and Checklist Manifesto, which was an inspiration to our founder here at One Place, what he would say is to close the gap between intentions and best performance in the face of sometimes what feels like insurmountable obstacles is really nothing more than a checklist, okay? We've all seen checklists. We probably all use them when we're going to the grocery store or elsewhere, but think of standard operating processes as checklists of daily operational tasks that need to be reviewed on an ongoing basis. Taking a simplistic look helps us feel a little more accomplished and on top of things. Let me ask you a quick question, and I want you to put it into the chat if you agree with these statements or not. We have all been on an airplane probably. In the cockpit, the pilot and the co-pilot go through a very intense checklist, a pre-flight checklist before heading to 40,000 feet, right? There's not anyone on this call or elsewhere that would like to get on a plane and have that pilot and co-pilot just decide that checklist isn't necessary, right? We all want them to do it. Yes, right? Yeah, I'm getting some laughs. Okay, good. Now, same thing. One more question. You're going in for surgery, or your child is going in for surgery, and that surgeon is getting ready to take a scalpel and put you or your child underneath some anesthetic, and then planning to use that scalpel, hopefully to have a good outcome in surgery. Do you want him to go through his pre-surgical checklist with his team? Or are you okay if he just takes a coffee break at that point? You want him to take that checklist out, right? And go through it all to make sure that you have a good outcome. Okay, so I think childcare and early care and education is equally important as a pre-flight checklist or a pre-surgical checklist? And I think you agree, right? Okay, good. Yeah, we're getting hearts. I think everybody agrees. Okay, we're going to move on from here. So defining compliance violations. When I think about compliance violation, we all know there's this huge body of regulatory licensing regulations. And those licensing regulations were put in place. Why? To protect the health and safety of the children in your care. And I know that all of the people on this call, doesn't matter what your role is, you all take that very seriously. There's not a single person on this call or anywhere in the business or in the industry of early care and education that wants to have an unsafe or unhealthy environment for children. We all love kids. That's the only reason we get into this. It certainly isn't to make millions, right? It's because we care about kids and we want to educate them. We want them to be well. We want them to be healthy and safe. Well, the licensing regulations were written as the very foundational principles, the very minimum standards to ensure health and safety. So here's what I would tell you. If you own a home, live in an apartment, if the foundation of that home started to show cracks, started lifting on one end and tilting a little bit like this, you'd likely immediately take some action to try and resolve that. Why? Put in the chat feature. Why would you immediately take some action if your house's foundation were starting to crack or tilt like this? Why would you do that? Just put your answer in the chat, and then Mariah or one of my friends come off mute and tell me what's being written in the chat. Just ask yourself why. Why would you?
Says fix for the safety of the home.
Yep, that's an excellent answer. Anything else?
Sarah said so the home doesn't come down.
That's right, right? Because your foundation is what everything else is built on top of, right? Anything else?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, so we've got safety, and because the foundation is what everything else is built on top of, correct? So your foundation has to be rock solid if you're going to build upon that foundation higher and higher up, right? Don't we all actually spend a great deal of money on our homes too, right? They're valuable, they're an asset. They're something that we care deeply about. Well, I think we care deeply about our childcare businesses too. And the licensing regulations are the very foundation of running what I would call some of the most excellent schools in the nation. The childcare centers that are on this call right now are likely some of those owner operators. So what I would tell you to say about licensing regulations is that's my foundation. I shouldn't be having any citations or violations in there. And it's likely that unless you've been in one of those states where they are issuing fines that hit you in the pocketbook, it's likely that you have some ongoing violations. They might vary in size and type and what they relate to. But I'm telling you that unless we get on top of it, not only are your insurance rates being impacted because underwriters for insurance companies are looking at those violations and using them to justify anywhere from 5x to 10x increase in your premiums, which could put you out of business, or they are using that to justify actually terminating your policy. I know that sounds scary. By the way, if you have not recently spoken to whoever your insurance carrier is, do not wait until the moment that it's getting ready to renew, because you may be one of those people that receives one of those non-renewal statements. I'd be checking in with them. Think of them as a member of the bench of your team that actually supports your business. And you have a right to give them a call and say, what do I need to know about my insurance policies? Is my underwriter looking at my violations? Which ones are likely to be most concerning to him? And can I get a control on the narrative that that underwriter is seeing by demonstrating a proactive approach to those licensing compliance violations? Likely, if you can control that narrative and show all of the things that you are putting into place that might mitigate the risk of a licensing violation, your underwriter is not going to be able to raise your rates as exponentially anyway. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So here are some categories on the screen right now. I'm just going to say raise your hand or put a thumbs up in the chat if you've had facility repairs or maintenance that have shown up in license violations. If child records or staff records were missing some tiny little document and it showed up in a citation or a license violation, just give me a thumbs up, give me a whatever, any kind of an icon to say, yep, I've had violations in that area. And I know most of you are being quiet because you don't want anyone to know, but it's okay because I'm telling you, I've got the data of 50 states now. And it doesn't matter if you're the KinderCare and Learning Care biggest corporations in America, or if you're a tiny little mom and pop shop running a capacity of 30. Everyone nationwide has had license violations at one time or another. So we're here to talk about not only how to get on top of them, but how to measure the cost when you're not on top of them quite yet. All right, health and hygiene, staffing and supervision, activities and equipment, safety. There are a myriad of areas where it is your license analyst's job. They're almost incentivized to find something wrong. Now, if I have a state person on this call, please do not hit me for this, but it's almost like it makes them feel good. And maybe it's because their job is sort of to find those areas, those little cracks in the foundation. It's like they're detectives and they're just sniffing them out. Well, we have to do everything we can to mitigate that and to demonstrate that we are in compliance on an ongoing basis when they're not there, so that the day they do show up, you can say, well, that cot and that crib was 18 inches apart when I measured it 10 minutes ago, and someone must have bumped it 5 seconds before you walked in the door. Now, imagine having that conversation. They go to measure the cribs. 2 of them are at 17 inches instead of 18 inches. But you know, and you've got it documented somewhere with photographic date and time stamped evidence that it was measured. Imagine how difficult it would be for licensing to write a valuation if they measure it and they say 17 inches, you're out of compliance, and you say 1 second, and you go find the document, you show it to them, they see the measurement as checked off in the checklist, and they see a picture, date and time stamped with a signature underneath it from 5 minutes ago, it's not likely they'll violate you. So we have to take that kind of proactive approach in every part of compliance. And you can do it. It isn't difficult. I can show you how. We can talk about it after this class. That's all I'm going to say. Let's move on because we got to talk about what is this really costing you. So poll question coming up. It's licensing. Are you prepared? They just knocked on the school door. And you know, am I wrong? Do they honestly figure out a way to show up on your absolute worst day? Because I can tell you, it seemed to me when I was owning my schools, licensing only showed up if I had 2 staff members who'd called in sick that day and I was scrambling around with my ratios trying to make sure that it was all covered. Always seems like they show up on that day, right? I bet you've had that experience. Okay, so next poll question. Have you ever had a licensing violation that had damaging effects on your business, either because of the time spent, the money spent, or loss of a customer? Yes or no are the only 2 answers. Come on, be honest. We're all colleagues here. We're all friends. No one's reporting this to the federal government. No one's calling your husband or your wife and telling her. It's okay to be honest. We've all had expenses. Hey, I had fines. There were fines that came out of the state of California if you had a licensing violation. So some states issue fines immediately. Some are starting to issue fines. Some are saying you cannot expand your business in our state until all of your licensing compliance is in order. Some are shutting down your classroom, your location, or your brand within your state. There is a wide variety of ways that they get us and harm our businesses. So just be honest. Yes, no. Has any of it ever damaged? Interesting. So interesting. I think we are going to be closing this in just a second, but right now it's looking like almost a 50-50 split. About 44% said yes, it's cost us. Oh, we're right, dead heat, 50-50. 50% of us, half have had something that had a real damaging effect. Some have not. So we're about a 50-50 split until I get a hold of you in the next second or two. All right, here we go. Let's have some fun with this. So we are a 50-50 split. If you said yes, I'm so sorry. I know it's painful. Maybe you had a fine. Maybe you lost a family when you had to post that publicly in the classroom. But those of you who said no, I don't know who you are. I can't see your face, but I want to ask you this. Have you had high turnover rates? Here's the thing that people aren't measuring. Gen Zers want to be on winning teams. And when they find themselves someplace where they don't think they are on a winning team, they will exit that job role. And it's common knowledge. They want to be on a winning team. And do they really understand what a licensing violation or citation is? Likely not. But when they're posted either publicly or within the school, they are likely to see that as I'm not on a winning team and therefore exit that role. So I guarantee you it's impacting your company culture, even if you're not aware of it, because they're not going to raise their hand and say, you had licensing violations. I'm going to go to work for that shiny center down the street. 2, you are caring for children of Gen Zers. If you are banking on the fact that they are not Googling those licensing violations before touring your location to drop off their precious new newborn, you're fooling yourself, because they are. It's out there, it's public information, and they are Googling it. And they, again, don't know the difference between what we all might see as a minor violation, paperwork related, oh, I don't know, professional development hours were 20% short for your staff one year and you got caught in it and got a violation. Okay, that's probably a little bit of a minor violation in all of our minds, but that new parent doesn't know that. And so it is affecting who comes to tour your school, who enrolls their child there at your school, and they want to see that you look like a modern business, which means utilizing technology to be able to show and demonstrate all of the wonderful things that you're doing on a daily basis. So even if you think you have not had one that jeopardized a family, jeopardized your money, I can guarantee it took time away for your staff, because what happens? Licensing comes in, they do the audit, and then someone on that team is responding with a corrective action plan that might include retraining, might include facility maintenance, updates. There is a world of things that might go on behind the scenes that you might not be calculating into the cost. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Common violations. Some of the most common violations that I've been pulling out of that data from the 50 states are small things like this. You know those little safety certificates for equipment? If one is even expired, some states will violate that, even if you haven't gotten the new latest tag on that piece of equipment. Lack of emergency preparedness, not enough documentation, policies, or procedures for doing drills on a consistent basis, having a not an active, what do they call it now? Not an active shooter, that's what they call it in schools, but that emergency response policy, procedure, follow-up, all of that being well documented. Being out of ratio, we all know about that. It happens on occasion, but inadequate supervision can even be something as small as during a transition, a teacher stopped at a restroom or something like that. Health records, lack of updated child immunization records, lack of a staff having health records on file that are up to date and current. Hazardous chemicals. Oh, that one used to really get me because they can write the violation so it sounds like you almost had, I don't know, cleaning supplies that were sitting right on the children's tables. But hazardous chemicals that are in the reach of children can be things like staff backpacks or purses that could include medicine or some other chemical inside their bag that now is within reach of the child. This is it, but they're going to list it as hazardous chemicals, medications improperly stored, medications that have expired and not been replaced. I have even seen licensing staff violate someone because during their cleaning protocol, the staffer took the spray bottle and set it down, and 2 seconds or 3 seconds later picked it back up and took it to the cabinet and locked it up. But because she set it down, that was a violation. Electrical sockets, those little electrical covers, if one's cracked or improperly installed, there are just a myriad. I mean, I could go on for the rest of the day on what could be a violation. Let's talk a little bit about playground safety. How about insufficient fall zone material? So you've just got your playground all up to date. You've got all the playground material sufficiently in place. You've measured it. Everything is looking bright and shiny and new. And 2 months later, they come out, they measure it right underneath the swings. And the kids have stirred all that fall zone material up. And suddenly you're short by ½ an inch. Now you're violated. So there are just so many things that can come up in this area. They will come up if you don't have a system of regularly accounting for them. So here's one more example. I know this sounds just so negative. We're going to get on to measuring the cost in just a minute. Deficiencies in Georgia. So I'm just giving you a snapshot of the state of Georgia in this slide. So most of their violations, by the way, there were some significant violations in facilities, and many of these in Georgia tended to be things like cracks, rips, snares in furniture. So if you had a couch and a chair in a break room and there's some rips and tears in that furniture, they can violate you for that. So you've got to come in and look at your location through the same type of auditing lens as an auditor might, a licensing auditor. One of the best routines you can get in the habit of is utilizing the licensing review form and self-auditing on a regular basis. Here's where schools tend to make the mistake. They have the center director or the regional or the owner do it. I say don't ever start there. Have your kitchen person do the review. Have your least experienced teacher do the review. Have your facility maintenance guy do the review. Have your bus driver do the review. Have them play the role of licensing, use that document that licensing uses, and go through everything in your center. Why? They don't have to know the regulations. In fact, it's better if they don't. They read the question, they audit it fully, and whatever their life experience has embedded in their brain will show up in that report and likely be far different from what someone who is very familiar with the licensing regulations might say. So always get that genius from your team. Your team is there because they love working with kids. They love working for you. Leverage that team genius, rotate who's auditing, rather self-auditing, and see what kinds of examples of infringement, citations, or violations might arise. By doing that self-audit, you can get ahead of what might come up in licensing and therefore proactively start putting some measures in place to ensure that you're in compliance. All right, childcare penalties for Georgia. So in Georgia, there were 820 penalties totaling a whopping $777,000, 266 and 99 cents. Yeah, that's my face too. Someone just put one of those little emojis where the mouth is like, yes. I don't know about you, but when I owned my business, if I'd have even had a $5,000 or $10,000 penalty, I probably would have swallowed my gum. I definitely would have gone home and cried into my pillow. So, don't allow them to take your money. Do not allow them to take your money. You and your team have worked hard to build a great business doing wonderful things. Think of this as a scavenger hunt for anything that could turn up that could cost you money. Break it down and gamify it. Make it something that can be like a scavenger hunt, a game. We're all going to analyze each other and try and find where our weak points are so that we can be ready to do battle when licensing comes in and protect the revenue coming into the business. Can you tell I'm still a child at heart? You can always tell I'm a child care provider because I want to gamify absolutely everything. Consequences of not meeting standards. I'm glad I'm making you laugh at least. It's not the easiest topic to present on because it can feel a little negative, right? But we got to have some fun with it. So we got to find ways of relaxing our brains long enough to look at our business with a holistic lens and say, there's all these things going right, but I know there's some things going wrong. How can I start reducing that? How can I lower that? How can I rank those items so that I can start ticking them off my list quickly? So consequences of not meeting those standards are poor quality practices, poor assessment of the center, safety of the children are compromised, risk to reputation. I want to pause here for just a second. Would you all agree? Put a thumbs up in the chat if you would agree that marketing is expensive. If you don't know that, if you don't know that marketing is expensive, come talk to me because marketing is expensive. Your website, marketing emails, any kind of marketing materials, brochures, printables, postcards, anything that you are doing for marketing is expensive. Social media campaigns, someone has to write them. They have to be intelligent. They have to be pretty. They have to be branded. They have to have your colors. They have to demonstrate your values. My gosh, I could go on and on and on, right? But don't waste marketing dollars. Your reputation is everything. It is absolutely everything, start to finish. Anytime you have licensing violations, you may have to spend more money on marketing to overcome it. Because now out in the marketplace, it can be one bad Google review, it can be whatever. But the world is looking and they can see everything. And so your reputation matters. It matters greatly. So think of licensing violations as a dip into your marketing budget. Think of it that way. Compliance orders are served. Fines of non-compliance. Occupancy can be affected. So remember, I gave you that example of classrooms being shut down. If a classroom is shut down, that means you're caring for less children, less revenue is coming in the door, and you're going to have some scheduling nightmares, for one thing. But all of that affects your actual bottom line revenue. So you want to be measuring those things on a proactive basis. Here's an even sadder one. This one almost could lead me to tears. 53 child fatalities in childcare settings were reported in states in 2022 and 2023. This was reported by Youth Today, and I know, it was the same shock feeling I had. And to be honest, do we really, really think that anybody wanted that to happen? Of course not. No one wanted that to happen. And I have absolute empathy for the schools that experienced this because it would have led to a lot of tears, a lot of soul searching. Potentially someone lost their job and potentially there was some litigation that happened, I imagine and assume. Inadequate supervision creates a safety hazard for young children who can fall, choke, or suffer other injuries without constant 100% focused supervision during play and eating. Compliance violations are far less costly if you prevent them rather than going through it and having to tackle it on the other side. Let's keep going because I want to get into some ways that you need to start measuring these costs. We're going to talk a little bit about direct costs, indirect costs, fixed costs, variable costs, one-time costs, and ongoing costs. Doesn't that sound fun? All right, direct costs are things like fines and penalties, legal fees. Did you even ever consider that if you had some violations that went on too long, it could turn into something where you'd have to hire an attorney? Well, guess what? It happens all the time. If you have violations that have started to repeat themselves, so repetitive license violations in a certain area of your business, the state can come in and place sanctions on your license, even shut down or shut off your license, like totally make it inactive. And if they do that, it's very likely you will have to hire an attorney in order to get that restored. So increased insurance premiums. We definitely know that that's happening right now. Corrective actions can be much, much more costly after a violation than they would have been if you were tackling that enhancement of your facility over a period of time. So it's much easier if you have time proactively to get on top of it and go out and shop the market for a low cost replacement, maybe even a free donated new couch if yours is ripped. If you need upgrades to your play equipment, it certainly is something you could go out, raise funding for, or go out and receive donations from your local business community before investing in if you've been proactive. If it's a license violation, and you're simply responding to that, you're going to go out and buy the first thing that you come across to get past that license violation in the corrective action period of time. Don't wait for that because it's putting you in a what would I call it? A self-created sense of urgency that will have you spending more. Administrative penalties can range anywhere in the United States from $100 to $10,000. Okay, I was going like this. $10,000? I mean, what could you do with $10,000 for your business? Probably a lot. So do not let those license violations keep piling up. Take them seriously because your state is very likely starting to move to a more stringent process with this. I've heard stories from Massachusetts and Colorado that they are tightening up on licensing violations and starting to issue much larger fines, penalties, and sanctions. And if it's happening in even one state in the United States, my experience tells me that over the course of the next 5 years, it's only going to start being spread across the nation because these state agencies do meet, they do talk, and even though their policies and forms don't look alike, they are sharing information. Corrective action costs. Here's one of the things that is likely happening. If you are measuring the cost of licensing violations, are you including the time it takes for your center director or assistant director to call and schedule a trainer to come in to retrain everyone on best practices in diapering? Are you having to bring in a trainer to do CPR and first aid training because not everyone got certified the last time? Maybe in your state, not everyone has to be certified. I would tell you a best practice would be have everyone CPR and first aid certified. Why? It's not required. Yeah, but guess what? Licensing is going to show up on the day when the two people that are certified call in sick. They're not going to show up on the days when you have plenty of coverage. So by having all staff proactively trained, now you have minimized the risk of them coming in at a time when you do not have sufficient coverage in the way of someone being trained on CPR and first aid. That's an example of going above and beyond the call of the minimum standard to ensure that you're never caught in an area where you're experiencing risk. All right. How am I doing on time here? Oh, I got to really wind this up. We only got about 10 more minutes and I want to take some of your questions. So reputational damage, staff turnover, and recruitment costs. According to the Society of Human Resource Management, to replace staff members costs 4.5 times the salary of that staff member. So the average salary for a childcare professional in 2023 was $36,360. To replace that staff member likely cost you $136,620. Boy, I know what I could do with $136,000. And I bet you do too. Let's get on top of these things before they are actually something that in reality is shutting down your business. We've got fixed costs that we're going to build into this model. Staff salaries, insurance premiums. I'm going to jump ahead because we only have 10 more minutes. But if you want a copy of this, you absolutely can have it. I'm going to jump to just one other area that could be costing you. Loss of government subsidies. Did you know that some of the still available grant money is dependent on you being compliant? So if you're out of compliance, you're not even eligible for some of the subsidies that could be bringing in revenue to your business. It also is going to mean increased monitoring. In some of the states, I was seeing people who had what I would consider to be very minor infractions that turned up in violations. So things like a missing document in a staff file, a missing document in a child's file, but because they had repetitive violations, now licensing was monitoring them. Hold on, hold your breath here. 6 times a year, 9 times a year. I saw several examples of 19 licensing 19 licensing visits in 1 year. Can you imagine the disruption to the learning and the business in general if licensing is showing up multiple times a month? That's a cost that will sink your business. All right, moving right along, measuring that cost. You want to create a cost benefit analysis approach. And since we're down to like 10 minutes, I'm going to speed through this, but don't worry.
I can give you a little extra time.
Okay. Well, we're gonna take a little extra time if everybody can stick with me, but even if not, I'm gonna send all this information to Mariah. She can share it with all of you. You'll have my contact information at the end. Happy to talk you through it. So cost benefit analysis. Let's go through this just a little bit. Business overview, assumptions, key revenue and expense categories, financial model breakdown, potential adjustments, and then key insights from the model. So what you want to do here is to make some assumptions about your business, like what's the total capacity versus the total number of children we have enrolled? What's the monthly tuition per child? Is it going up next year? Are you having to hold it, completely stagnant? What are you doing? Have you done some proactive research to find out what everyone is charging for tuition per child per age category? Have you gotten rid of any of those discounts that could be holding back your revenue model? So some discounts make total sense. If you're working near, maybe you're offering care near an Amazon facility, so Amazon employees get some type of discount. Perfectly fine in that category. But if you're still offering those multi-child discounts, it's probably holding back your revenue and preventing you from having the cash flow that you need to get on top of facility enhancements, make adjustments, make sure that all the staff training is done and well documented, all the things that would get you into compliance and mitigate risk. So you've got to think about those things. Let's see. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go back. Hold on. Okay. So once you've got some of that basic information, how many team members are on staff? How many do you have in your staff pipeline? And when I say pipeline, what I mean is you should always be interviewing for new staff and have some type of pipeline, some type of bench of people that you have interviewed that could be potential candidates to come onto your team. And then keeping that pipeline filled up because they are likely to find other positions, but you always want to have some folks in the pipeline that could step in and fill staff key roles. All right, so we're looking at sources of revenue, tuition from parents. How are you collecting it? Could it be increased in some way? What about expenses? Is there anything that you're paying for that you likely could be getting some sort of discount for? Is there a way for you to mitigate some expenses that might be able to give you a little pool of money for improving in the area of compliance? Like, I don't know, go to your suppliers and ask, hey, if I bring you 2 new customers, will you give me a discount on my overall cost? Oftentimes, vendors will give you a discount for referring other people to them. Same thing you could be offering to your parents. Hey, parent, I'm willing to give you X number of free afternoons or X discount on your tuition if you bring us to other families. There's ways to think about doing these kinds of things to increase revenue, giving you a little pool of money that you can use to work on building a culture of compliance, having tools that can help you to monitor your compliance, know ahead of time what those leading indicators are and what those lagging indicators are so that you can start to get on top of these things. But you've got to get creative. You've got to build a team of people around you who can share best practices and strategies. So calculating your monthly revenue and your expense calculations and looking at all of those, get your profit calculations going, and then start looking for potential ways to adjust the model. Is there enrollment fluctuation? Is there seasonality to it that you need to be accounting for? Changes in tuition fees. We talked a little bit about that. Staff costs include potential overtime bonuses or benefits. If you're not taking care of your staff, then you're not optimizing your business. You must find ways to give them things that make them feel valuable, make them feel important, make them feel like they are a key reason why the business is succeeding. And they don't have to be financial. Let me give you 2 ideas that I heard at one recent conference that I went to. One was the business owner went out to Amazon, ordered a really fancy $500 massage chair, installed it in the break room, and when the other team members in the center nominated someone for going above and beyond the call of duty in an area that they were training on that month, that person got to schedule a 30-minute break inside the massage chair. Creative, wonderful, tied back to whatever you're training on in health and safety. And nominated by your other employees means you're building culture. Another idea was on Fridays over the PA system, they would announce oh, what's that thing I'm not good at, those games on trivia. So they'd create some questions and answers around compliance, announce it over the loudspeaker, and the first person to get the answer in correctly got to, maybe it is get some, I don't know, an hour off on a Friday or a Monday that they could bank up to use when they needed to. There's lots of ways to incentivize your employees that aren't necessarily giving them a salary raise. So get creative, start looking for ways other businesses do it, and then find the model that works best for you. After going through this, you'll have some key insights from this financial model. Move on to Oh, we talked a little bit about that. What are some expansion plans you might have? What are some enhancements to the facility that are needed? And now start looking for risk. I wanted to get to this section. Develop a compliance management plan. What should be included here? If you do nothing else, create yourself. Why did that do that? Well, shoot. Let's go back. Oh, good. I had an automation there that I wasn't anticipating. All right, regulatory compliance management plan. Come on, we all got to laugh at that one, right? Okay, let me see if I can get that slide to go back and to pause. I think that's a pause. We're going to hope that I can work my own technology. You need the regulatory. All righty. I am not sure how to make that stop doing that. Hmm. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Okay, since you're all having a good laugh at me and with me, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna send you this plan, if I can get it to go back just quickly enough. We will include this slide and how you go about building that compliance plan next. Boy, sometimes you just gotta laugh, right? Staff training and developing essentials. I've got some ideas there too, but obviously the automations are taking over. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's push pause here. My last thought was become a compliance champion. What you care about, your team will care about. And so you won't have to measure everything. Literally, you'll start to build a team of people who will help hold each other accountable to the things that matter most. So I hope you had some fun. I hope it wasn't boring. Let's take some questions, and I'm going to put my contact information up here on the screen. Feel free to shut it, use it, call me, email me. And I want to make one final offer as Mariah's back on camera now with me. I was telling Mariah at the very beginning, if you would like a detailed compliance violation evaluation from me and the team at One Place, there is my email. Here is what you need to do. You email Cindy at oneplaceonline.com. You ask for your cost evaluation in compliance, and then you be patient because there's a small team here doing it while we do our regular jobs. But we will actually give you a detailed, very personalized audit of your compliance and the areas that we think you should be focusing on in 2025. So that's our free gift back to you. Mariah, let's take some questions.
yes. Thank you so much, Cindy. This was very detailed. You had a lot of information, but all of it was very, very important. And we're appreciative that you're going to send the slides so people can go back and review it. We don't have any questions in here, but I do want to point out from Laura Orozco on here, she did share her first violation as a director, and she mentions that they received a call from the state informing them that someone had reported that there was no soap in the 3-year-old bathroom. And the state representative mentioned that they would visit their childcare center the following day to ensure that the issue was addressed. One of the administrators checked the bathroom and found that there was indeed no soap for the children. The administrator informed the teacher, and all the administrators communicated about the issue. Unfortunately, the teacher was having a tough day and did not take action. When the state representative arrived the next day, all the administrators realized that no one had actually followed through to fix the problem, and they walked through. The state licensing representative issued the violation. So thank you so
Boy,
much for sharing, Laura.
yeah, Laura, thank you first and foremost for having the courage to be transparent. What that actually shows is you are a true leader, because true leaders can be transparent about their wins, but they can also be transparent when something doesn't go right. Here's what needs to happen, and here's why you may want to reach out to me and get a demo of our software. Not that I'm trying to sell anybody here, but one of the things that happens in childcare is, and this is not uncommon, The team might even identify a hazard, might identify an area of noncompliance, but they all assume someone else is taking care of it. How many times has that happened, even in your own home? It happens in my home, and there's only me and Travis left. Our kids are all grown. I assume he's taking care of something. He assumes I'm taking care of something. So that's just being human. And it's okay for the teacher to have a bad day, right? And we all need to be able to step in and help our colleagues when someone is having a bad day. But that's where having a digital system, giving transparency to these kinds of things to ensure that once it's noticed by one person, that someone in the agency is seeing it and can either delegate that task to someone else, or another team member can just proactively pick it up. So having a digital software that wraps its hands around your operations can protect you from exactly those kinds of what I would consider to be a very small minor violation.
Yes. So we'll make sure that everyone has Cindy's contact information. Let's see right here. Yeah, Patty made a comment and mentioning to not rely on staff and to build things up. I think it's a group effort. I think
It is.
you
Everything
have to
is,
rely.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cindy from NCCA, would you like to have a couple of words?
Well, I think Cindy did a great job of, outlining, the challenges and opportunities, and each state is different. There are states that would not have called about the soap. They would have just dropped in. There are states that would probably not do a special visit for that, but they would double check for it later. Um, but again, there are states that anytime a complaint comes in, they go out and they have to either substantiate it or unsubstantiate it. The one motto that I had when I was working with teams of directors and district managers was always, you as the person in charge have to go through every day with your licensing eyes wide open. And again, not just tell them what to fix, but fix it, tell them why, and remind them that it has to stay that way and why, and how it relates back to them. I always think about the changing table when there was a pen or something left on the changing table. We would have to address that, hopefully proactively, but sometimes reactively, meaning after we were written up. And I always started that conversation with, gee, I hope you don't get sick and have to miss work and a paycheck. I know how important that is. And a lot of times teachers would just look at me like, what are you talking about? I said, well, that pen on that changing table could pick up some bacteria, and then you pick it up and you write with it, and then you eat lunch, and there is a chance that you could become ill.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want that to happen. So this is how we prevent that. And then keep checking that, same person, because, one thing that is important to remember is sometimes we as humans have to hear something more than once. And so as directors, I would say, if you're using a checklist on a regular basis, they're going to hear it more than once. And also, I loved your idea, Cindy, about having, other people on staff check. And then also making the staff comfortable, especially in those rooms where there's a lead teacher and a teacher assistant. Leads sometimes shy away and don't see it as their responsibility to double check and fix and coach and train during the normal workday. And that's one of the reasons why I think we see so many licensing violations in some areas in infant toddler rooms, because typically there's two people working together. And I would think it would be the opposite.
Yep.
Because somebody would remember, oh, you didn't wash your hands after you changed. They've got to work in sync. But it is a very costly situation. I saw yesterday from one of our business affiliates, Sam Phillips, that she had a client who has 4 locations, and their insurance went up $75,000 for 1 year. And ultimately that they didn't even have a history of noncompliance. But the reality is, as you pointed out, Cindy, when you were looking at Georgia, yeah, you might have a better chance of getting insurance, for your childcare center if you are compliant, you have a compliant history and no, abundance of claims, but they're also looking at the industry at large.
Mhm.
And again, I definitely don't want to board a plane where the pilot forgets to go through his checklist. And that was impactful. I've not heard that. So thank you so much. And certainly contact Cindy. She, One Place is one of our business affiliates. Thanks for that great offer. And Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Feliz Navidad, Happy Kwanzaa, all of the above. Have great holidays.
Thank you.